Courtney, and I'm a sophomore English major at the University of South Carolina.
And I'm Kaylen, and I am a freshman English and History major here at the university as well. And these podcasts are meant to introduce you to medieval and Renaissance manuscripts using mainly pages from formerly complete books. Now, these components can be found all over the country at various American institutional libraries.
Manuscripts are rare and expensive, but that doesn't mean you need to be able to drop money on a 6-figure Bible to learn about its different figures. All you really need is about a dozen leaves that teach you basic to sometimes even complex attributes and features of the medieval book production process and its uses.
In these podcasts, we are going to cover the manufacturing of parchment, the copying, illumination, and binding of medieval books, manuscript textuality, and how manuscripts have survived into the modern day.
Let's begin by acknowledging that parchment comes from animal hides. On a fundamental level, Christopher de Hamel has observed that the rectangular shape of books probably derives from the oblong shape of animals. Maximizing the parchment meant retaining this characteristic shape.
Here's a visual example of the term oblong. This term, as used by Christopher de Hamel, refers to a shape that is longer than it is wide or vice versa. As you can see here, I'm attempting to draw a sheep, which was one type of animal used to create parchment. If you were to go all the way around the animal's circumference, from head to tail, as shown with this blue arrow, and unravel the skin, you'd get this oblong shape. This is why manuscripts are shaped the way they are, as they mimic the animal they derive from. It doesn't necessarily have to be an oval, but can also look more rectangular.
The animals were slaughtered for food, but then their skin was able to be used for leather or parchment. The animal origin of the parchment was no more foreign to medieval readers than leathered goods were to Americans.
Even an elite manuscript such as the Languedoc Breviary, created for an Italian duke, showed signs of hair follicles and scar tissue, causing us to acknowledge that parchment comes from animals. Modern DNA scholarship is beginning to tell us more about the mixture and proportion of various skins within single medieval manuscript books. As of late, DNA researchers have determined that 13th century Italian portable Bibles, known as pocket Bibles, as we see here, were made almost exclusively of goat skin, while French examples were made almost exclusively of calf skin, and English ones were 50% calf with the rest sheep and goat.
This infographic is from an article detailing the animal origin of 13th century uterine vellum used for pocket Bibles. As you can see, Italian Bibles were made almost entirely of goat, while French ones were predominantly calf with a little bit of goat intermixed. English pocket Bibles were made of a sizable amount of sheep and goat vellum, but the majority were derived from calf skin. If you want to read more about this topic, scan the QR code to link you to the original article. Christopher de Hamel makes the point that the hair side, being tougher and less flexible than the flesh side, gives a slight natural curl to the leaves that can sometimes be observed.
Naturally, flesh sides are also glossier and smoother. Ink was less likely to adhere to the flesh side of the parchment, especially in 13th and 14th century Italian manuscripts. This can be seen in this manuscript Bible folio. Notice how light the script appears on this side of the page compared to this side. Here's another example of how the ink adheres to the flesh side of the manuscript versus the hair side of the manuscript.
Not to get too visceral about it, but skin can come from the back, flanks, and belly of an animal. Needless to say, the appearance of a single piece of parchment can vary widely across even just a single page. Belly skin was often translucent, and a special case is axillary skin.
The Latin word for axillary means joint. The skin around the animal's legs, neck, and groin was naturally thicker, which caused it to be less flexible. Because of this, it can be used sometimes in books, but only on special occasions.
To display an example of how axillary skin is thicker than regular skin, I'm using a caliper on this missile. A caliper is a tool that can be used to measure thickness of parchment. In this first clip, I'm measuring the lower, middle, bottom margin of the leaf. This is the thinner section of the leaf that came out to about 0.179 millimeters. In the following clip, I'm measuring the same leaf, yet the outer corner margin, which consists of axillary skin. This is notable based on its texture. As I measured this part of the parchment, the caliper read about 0.293 millimeters. This exhibits how the axillary skin is 48.3% thicker than the other part of the parchment.
Animal skin can exhibit prominent veining, which is especially visible in the margins of a manuscript. These blood vessels lie in the reticular layer of the dermis. Since veins are tubules, they flex more than the stiffer parchment around them and often appear as natural creases.
Some veins are practically invisible, but soiling like this can reveal them. It's common to see the actual tubules of veins, and flexing the page can make them fall off. In this example, all of the tubules have fallen out. This is a result of handling the manuscript over time. As the pages have been slightly flexed, the tubules have fallen out.
Skin has layers, epidermis on top and dermis below. The dermis primarily consists of reticular layers of sweat glands and hair follicles.
While scraping removes the epidermis and much of the reticular layer, we can still see evidence of the animal's fur and residual hair follicles. These are often said to resemble pepper.
Follicles are especially visible when the fur was dark or strongly patterned by spots or brindles. Spots are usually associated with goats, and you can see the scallop-shaped pattern of the goat's fur on this page. On this page, the pattern is simply unmistakable. It can look like a water stain and be very distracting, as is in this example.
Dense follicles also occur along the length of the spine. This makes it interesting to consider how these lines appear on the page itself. Here's an example of the dense peppering appearance in a line on a manuscript page. This is an example of the animal's spine. Where the spine appears on the page is entirely dependent on how the vellum was cut and folded. Some places the spine can appear are horizontally, vertically, on the outside edge, and, in this example, across the fold.
Christopher de Hamel proposed that animals slaughtered in the field may not have been as carefully bled as domestic animals. This often resulted in more prominent veining.
Animals were also very susceptible to scarring, and these scars were a lot less elastic than normal skin, so it made parchment manufacturing very difficult. In the next episode, we're going to talk about how parchment was made and how it relates to the natural features of an animal's skin.